In this video, we're going to talk about views and layout in RHINO 7 and also about construction planes and how you can set up them and set up the grid. Now let's get started here and start to insert some simple solids. So I'm going to go to solid and create a simple box just by going to corner height and just create it like this. And you can also use the other views when you want to finish a particular 3D object, because you can move and then zoom in and zoom out with the scroll wheel and then finish with a click. So usually it's just a series of clicks that you need to do to create your object. And I'm going to do here some random shapes. So for example, with the right click of my mouse, I can recall the same command, which was the box. I can create another box here like this. So I will just create something random without caring about the actual measures and the snaps and other things like that we're gonna talk later. Okay, so let me create here another one. Okay, you can see that each time that you create a box, it's gonna place on a construction plane. So for the top view and the perspective, the construction plane is located at the bottom. For the others here, front and right, you can see that it's from a front or right view. So if I create a box right here, so right click and create, it's gonna place it not in X and epsilon axis of the world, but the X and epsilon axis of this view. And then I will move here to the top view, and now the Z axis, so my height has become actually my width. Okay, then I can click and drag, and this is gonna move it into position. So what I'm trying to say here is that you have two types of coordinate systems. This is how they're called. You have a view-related coordinate system or construction plane, and then you have a world coordinate system that you see here on the bottom left. And this is the one representing the absolute or universal or the world coordinate system. In AutoCAD, these are called WCS, World Coordinate System, and User Coordinate System, the UCS. So basically, we can work with these work planes and we can work with the grid. Now, the grid, it's important if you want to work not like we did here, so we just created some random boxes, but if you want to work a little bit more precise, and you can manage the grid by going into this panel here, which is the options or the document properties. Go to the grid and you can set up here the, well, first of all, you can decide if you want to change the grid for all the viewports or only in the active viewport. Now in this case I will choose the all viewports, and then I can choose the number of the grid lines. So let's say that I only want 10 grid lines. You can see here that the grid is smaller now, and if I increase this, I'm gonna increase the size. Then I will decide the minor grid line spacing. So in this case it's 1 grid line each millimeter. So let's change this and make it 1 grid line each 10 millimeters. So it means that this square here is 1 centimeter times 1 centimeter. And also you can set the major lines every 10 minor grid lines. So if I say OK, and I can see this is gonna be 1 grid for each millimeter and then 1 major grid each 10 centimeters basically. And I can also set here the snap spacing, which should be the same of this one here, the minor grid. Or let's do this, but you can also set this to 100, which means it's gonna be every 10 centimeters. Okay, so if I see here, this is my grid now, and so my object is really small. It's about 1 centimeter. So if I want to do something bigger, let's create something bigger right here. So I can now use the grid and the construction plane and use the snap to the grid. The snap to the grid, it's right there at the bottom. It's called grid snap, so you can click there and activate it. And now if I select again a solid box, corner to and height, I can now define a more precise box. I can say, okay, I want this to be, let's say, 10 centimeters, major line, so 10 centimeters for the length, and then let's say I want it 6 centimeters width, and there it is, and I want 1 centimeter height. Okay, so I've drawn a perfect and precise box with the measures that I wanted. You can always deactivate the snap to the grid by clicking here below, or also by pressing F9 on your keyboard. F9 is going to turn on and off the grid snap, not the grid, but the grid snap. So grid is another important feature here in RHINO to help you work more precisely. And then you have also the snap to the objects, but we're going to talk about that in another video. Let's concentrate on the views. Now let's go here from the standard toolbar, and we can find other important command here. Also, you will find some of these in view drop-down menu, or here if you go to the set view toolbar or the display toolbar as well, or also viewport layout. These are all important for the management of the viewports and the workspace. Now let's go from here, from the standard, and I will show you this is a really interesting feature. For example, if you get lost in a particular moment, you don't find your scene anymore, you can quickly get there by clicking on Zoom Extents. Now Zoom Extents is going to show you the extents of your project. So perhaps you forgot about some model that you created far away, so when you do Zoom Extents, it's going to look like this. You can spot that object and perhaps bring it back into the scene or delete it. So this is really important and useful. Now if you click with the left mouse, it's going to zoom only on this viewport. If you click with the right mouse, it's going to zoom on the other viewports as well, so all the viewports. Now the other one here also is pretty important and useful. It's called zoom selected. So if I, for example, want to see this object right here real quick, I can again left mouse click to zoom in one view, right mouse click to zoom in all the views. And again, this is really useful because just with a click I can get there. Next one here is to undo the view change. So if I, for example, move around here in the view and I want to go back, you can click here. So it's similar to the undo redo, the standard undo redo, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Epsilon, but this time it's gonna be only for the views. So you can go back and forward and undo and redo view changes. Now when you find this little arrow, it means that down there you're gonna find a lot of useful tools concerning a similar command. So for example here, well, I cannot show you each single command of RHINO because there are really a lot of them out there, but for example you can test them. For example, this one here is called turntable. You can rotate your view here constantly with a kind of a really slow animation, and you can also manage the speed. And also here the next one will be the viewports. So if you click here, it's gonna open up the viewport layout, and again you can find it also right here. So you can see that you can get to the same point in many different ways. Now this is also really interesting. You can change the layout real quick, and also you can maximize and restore the viewport. You can do this also by double clicking on the name of a particular viewport to quickly change the viewport there. You can also add other viewports. So right now I've added a new viewport here in the middle. If you have a big screen, you can use a lot of these extra viewports to see your project in many different angles. So you can continue here creating and doing other operations with layout. Now when you want to go back to the original setting, just click here on the 4 viewports. This is gonna bring you back there. And again, you can see here I can definitely use the zoom extents again if I want to see everything, or if I want to select particular object, I can right click with the zoom selection. It's gonna bring that back on. Now some of these we're gonna see them later. For example, the adding a picture plane command. This is also useful. You can switch from parallel to projection to perspective, and you can also use the 2-point perspective, which is probably a little bit better to navigate with. So you can also take your time here and experiment yourself. I'm just going to show you the most important tools here. Now this one also, it's pretty useful, and this is all about the views. So for example, you can change here the view. This perspective can become a top view or get back here to the perspective. You can also use cameras here and camera related command, but again we're gonna see this in another video about the camera. And also this is again changing the view according to the construction plane. Now I will show you the construction plane in just a bit, but this is another way essentially to change the view, not according to the absolute system, but according to the user coordinate system or the construction plane that you have set up. Okay, now let's move to the next one, which is construction planes. And again, you will find it also here. So just showing you different ways that you can get to the same part. Now here you can change the origin, for example, of your construction plane. So I can change it right here, for example. And let's get here to the perspective. Let's say that I want to add something here down below the first box, the bottom face. And now if you see here, this is now this will not be difficult because I need to create a simple box, and this time I will not go upward, but I'm gonna go down. So you can see here that I can create like some steps. Okay, what if I want to create an additional step? Now this becomes a little bit harder because if I create a box, I have to create it, and then I need to extrude it, well, define the Z, the height, and then click and drag it and then place it down there. So it's 2 operations. But if I use a construction plane, I can directly place that at the very lowest point there. Now let's change here from perspective to shaded so we can see this a little bit better. There you go. So one useful command is this one here, set C-plane to object. So I will select and place my C-plane on that object. You can see that it has moved. So if I create another box here, corner to height, so remember that these are view dependent. So if I create it here, that's fine. If I create it in another view, it's not gonna be in that spot. So if I create the same box here, it's gonna be, you can see there, in another height, because this is this one here. So it depends the view that you choose when you are working on a particular construction plane. Okay, then you can change here the set C-plane elevation, so you can change the height of the construction plane. You can also set plane to surface. So let's click in the pyramid command and let's create a pyramid real quick, something like that. So if I want to place an object right on that face of that pyramid, I need to have this one here, set place. That's my surface where I want to place the object. And then I can define the origin. So it can be, for example, there in the middle. and then the x-axis direction or the epsilon axis direction. If I want to keep the default, I just press enter, and that's it. Look at my construction plane now. So totally different from the beginning. Now you can set a construction plane based on a curve, or you can rotate a construction plane. You can do a lot of operations here. You can also undo construction planes or redo with the right mouse click. And again, you have other options here. For example, you can save a particular plane with the name. For example, I will type X here, and then I can bring back a particular plane by clicking with the right mouse and say, okay, restore X. And I can also use this one here to set the plane to the view. So if I use this view like this and click here, look where my C-plane is. So precisely in front of my camera in the viewport. And these are the absolute. So I can click here and bring it back to the world top. So this was the one that we used at the beginning. So if you want to reset, you can use this one here. So spend your time a little bit here to understand better how you can work with construction planes, because they can be really, really helpful. So we talk about C-planes, we talk about setting views, and also we will come back to this later on if needed. And now we are going to talk about the display. So display, it's important if you want to see your scene in different ways. So for example, if I need to understand what the structure here and how these solids are behaving, for example, this one here is inside another solid. It's not juxtaposed like that, so I can understand that text to the wireframe. Wireframe will reveal the structure of every object that you have in the scene. Then you have other views styles. You can access them from here, but also from this little arrow. So again, you have maximize, and then you can change this shaded. Shaded is useful because it's gonna give you that three-dimensional effect. Rendered, it's a little bit better. And ghosted, it's gonna show you like a little bit of wireframe and a little bit of the three-dimensional aspect. Technical, artistic. Now be careful on the settings that you have, because these are actually usually looking better than this, but I believe that I've turned down the use of my graphic card, so it's not showing this really better. So let me show you where you can fix this or where you can adjust this. So we need to go to the options all the way down to views, and we already talked about this in the previous video, where you can actually manage all the RHINO options. So here you will find all the different styles, and also down here you will find OpenGL. Now you can see here that I have decreased my OpenGL level. Now this is gonna be for faster performance, but also less quality. So I'm gonna bring this to max OpenGL, which is gonna be the best quality, but it's gonna be a little bit heavier. Now this depends on your computer. If you're feeling that this is too heavy, you can go here and decrease the level. Or for example, if you have issues like seeing a black screen, things like that, you can go here and downgrade this. And here in anti-aliasing, you can change it if you want to see less of these like jagged edges. This is caused by a low or a unchecked anti-aliasing. So if you bring this to 8 times, it's gonna be the highest quality. So you need to close and reopen RHINO to see the actual effects taking place. So now we can see the same effects that we saw before, for example, shaded and render, and this is gonna look nice. And we have some ambient occlusion here. We don't have materials or anything, but it's already looking like a little bit realistic. And again, you can check all the other styles here. They're gonna look better now. Okay, so that's a really important settings right there in the options that you must consider. Okay, go to the view here, and then you have also the various display modes that you can go and check one by one. So you can see here each one has a different usage of the grid, each one uses different way the shadows, and you have quality here for the shadows. This is, for example, for the rendered. Now if you like one of these view but you want to customize it, for example the artistic or the pen, then you can go here to the display mode, select the one that you want to modify or customize, and then copy this, and this is the copy of pen, and then you can do a lot of changes here on how the shading behaves, how the visibility behaves. So for example, you don't want to see the curves, or you want to see the curves, or you don't want to see the grid, or you want another ambient color, and so on. So we have a lot of stuff here going on that you can experiment with. Now anytime you can click on restore default, so you're gonna restore everything as it was. So don't be afraid here to experiment, especially if you create copies. You can change everything here and just make a lot of mistakes also, but you're never going to ruin anything because you have the original right here. Now in the drop down menu here you will also find other stuff. For example, you can change here, you have the navigation again, zoom extents, and the one that we saw in this video. You can set the view again, you can set the seaplane, you can set the camera, and in the you can set the viewport layout, the grid options you can access also from here. So it's really everything is connected. And also here again you will find some of the settings. Okay, now finally if you go here in the display, you can work on each single view and change the display. For example, again, it's similar to what you do in the viewports. You can decide if you want to see, for example, shadows or not. You can decide if you want a flat shading or something more complex. You can decide if you want to see the grid or not, or the seaplane axis, or the word icon, which is this little icon at the bottom left. So you can edit all these different settings for each of the viewport that you are going to create. Okay, so this will be all for this video. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to support us, join the channel, and please write your comments if you have questions, suggestions, anything that can be useful also to other users, and also check our other video guides and video courses. And again, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.